Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Enough channel. In this video we're going to do the tops, chops, traps and slaps for SuperCoach in round 11 of the 2024 season. So Magic Round this weekend. Hoping for a good weekend, particularly Friday night, going to the footy myself. But we'll get stuck into the video. So how it works for those that are new to the channel or the concept. Is if we have a trade-in option that we like, we think it's good, well, we give it the tops. If we have an option to trade out that we like, well, we give them the chop. If we have a trade-in option that we don't really think is a good idea, it's probably a trap. And if we've got a trade-out option that we think you should be holding on to, well, then we're going to go for the slap. So I guess the first tops pick for this week is you guys. So we've got over to 370 subscribers now. So it's just the best for everyone getting on board. Appreciate it all. And so you can see the slap there for the non-subscribers as well. Shameless plug to get involved with the channel. But yeah, everyone who has, fantastic, well done. But now that I've got that out of the way, we'll get into the actual video. So at the hooker position, the tops pick this week, I've basically gone to the default setting, which is Jerry Marshall King. A bit of a high break even there with the 81. But, we've talked about his origin buy coverage enough over the weeks. So, I mean, if you did want to upgrade your second hooker spot, he's probably the one to target. On the chopping block, we've got Joey Lussick. So, as you can see, 73 break even. So, he's probably starting to lose a bit of cash. And I guess the one thing that looks good is they have named 4 forwards on the bench this week for the Eels. But, even then, we can move him on potentially. The trap this week, I've gone with Connor Watson. So, did back up his monster score with another decent one. So he still has a break even of 6, but you're only going to get the one sort of cash rise. He should cover around 13 admittedly, which is nice, but then he has a buy in round 14. So I guess, trading him in now, you're probably only going to get 2 weeks before you'll want to move him on. And, you probably won't make that much money out of it. And the slap this week, I've gone with Blake Brayley. So 103 break even. People might be a bit scared to jump off, but obviously the low game last week just came down to the fact that he was filling in out in the halves. So he wasn't getting through his usual work rate in the middle, playing hooker. But with Nico Hines and Braden Trindle both named in the squad this week, I think it's pretty safe to say he'll be playing, close to 80 minutes as a hooker this week. In the front row, there wasn't a lot of activity around trading, so I thought I'd go a little bit left field. Obviously, if you haven't got Fanua Blake, you haven't got Haas, you wanted to bring them in, you certainly could. But that's not the right price or break even. Oh, go back. I've just broken the whole thing. Must have forgot to look at Max King's price and break even. So apologies there. That's inaccurate. He definitely doesn't have a negative 49 break even. But I guess the reason why I've suggested Max King as an alternative comes down to the Bulldogs' buy schedule. They do have a really good buy schedule. So obviously, if you can't afford Harsh, you can't afford Fanua Blake. Despite all the injury carnage going on around the league, at that cheaper price, he offers a pretty solid sort of output in your front row. No, I've got them around the wrong way too. I've completely stuffed this slide up, but that's okay. So the no, actually, they should both be holds. I don't know what I was doing here. Um, don't trade out Jack DeBellin. We'll just skip over that one. Um, so how Tapua has been on a few people's list to come in this week, but his price only sort of spiked because of a try. He's averaging about 15 minutes per game. So even though he's cheap and he's got a nice break even, don't cut corners in the front row. It's not worth it. Xavier Wilson is the slap. That's correct. Jack DeBellin could also be a slap. So these numbers are right. It's just I don't know what I was thinking this morning when I compiled this. But Jack DeBellin obviously on the bye, so don't stress. He'll be back next week. Um, and Xavier Wilson, obviously, 51 break even is a bit scary, but once Haas and Carrigan get into Origin mode, um, he will offer a lot more value as a middle forward. I guess the downside is they don't play in the round 13 bye, so and with Haas and Carrigan, their ability to back up and play big minutes, might not see a big bump. So if anything, you could probably swap these two around. If you wanted to chop Wilson, I'd understand, but I don't think you need to. All right, I think finally a slide that I've done correctly. So the second row, the tops pick this week, I've gone with Luke Garner. So, he's not going to score two tries every week. Don't get it twisted. He had an awesome game last week. But at 550k, negative 46 break even, and I guess, the sort of reassurance that you'd imagine Liam Martin would be involved in the New South Wales Origin team, which, even if Scott Sorensen finds his way back into the team sooner rather than later, that Garner is probably still going to get a spot on an edge and play big minutes. So for that reason, I think, if you're looking for a second rower to bring in this week, he would be the one to target. On the chopping block, I've gone with Jamin Salmon. So a bit rare that I sort of suggest trading out players with good buy coverage like Salmon. But just with the role change, he's moved out to that edge, and basically job sharing with Jacob Preston. On the right edge again, the Bulldogs, all their attacks going down the left edge. So, it just doesn't leave a lot of upside for the pick. So I think if you can move him on, like you can find the money to upgrade him to, say, Ghana, um, or I guess if you got him in your centre wing and you wanted to change to one of the, the cheap fullback options that have popped up there, I think that absolutely makes sense. Um, the trap this week, I've gone with Jeremiah Nanai, and so this just comes down to the fact that he's probably going to play Origin. So the numbers look good. 29 break evens, pretty juicy. He's a bit of value there, but yeah, the fact is he should be playing Origin, so he probably won't play around 13. And also his price has been elevated by I think it's something like 5 tries in the last 3 weeks. So he can score a try, and I know I've experimented with him in my team in the past because of his upside. But when it goes wrong, it doesn't go really wrong. It's just it's not great. It's 30s, 40s, that sort of thing. If he doesn't get that try, so one to avoid there. And the slaps, I've got two very much in the same category, and it's very much in line with the conversation we just had before. But Kai Pierce Paul and Finny Furiaki from the Cowboys. So obviously, on the bench, edge rolls aren't ideal. They've got highish break evens, which is scary. But what we're hoping for is with both these guys is they will play in the starting team in round 13. So might be a bit more of a stretch for Pierce Paul, given that Tyson Frizzell isn't guaranteed. But he's one of those players who always seems to do a job when they call him into the Origin team. So with Madge Maguire, I just get a vibe that Frizzell's his sort of guy that he'd like in the team, and Finny Furiaki obviously will slot in for Nanai. So if you can, I'd suggest holding. Obviously with Kai Pierce Paul on the bench this week, he has a bye next week, so he won't lose a lot of value before round 13 when you can see Frizzell's made the team, and then obviously if you need to trade him in round 13, then so be it. At halfback, so the top pick this week, I've gone with Matt Burton, and so um, I talked about this a little bit in my round review video when I did my initial trades. Looking at who to trade for Cleary, potentially Hines if we had to, and I guess the way I'm looking at this is if I bring Burton in, I'm not going to, keep him at halfback for the season. Obviously, I want to get Cleary back once he's up and running for the run home. Um, depending on Sean Johnson's injury, he might become really handy after round 13. The Warriors do have a good run through the middle of the origin period. So what I'm thinking is if I bring in Matt Burton this week, I can then, move him to my 5/8 position when I'm ready to bring in that other elite halfback. So he does offer good coverage of the buys. He may play Origin. So I know sort of the full plan is this week bring in Burton, next week bring in Dylan Brown, who will then have dual position eligibility, and then we can flip between them. So I guess currently I'd have Burton and Hines as my halfbacks, I should say. So obviously, if they both find their way into the Origin team, or Nico goes down with this calf complaint again, I could just swap Burton and Brown. Brown will play halfback for that week, and then I should be able to cover after that. And I guess also, if I run with Brown and Hines, Brown and Burton, they would just become my 2 5/8s for the long run. So I think that's the reason why I'd have him as a top pick. Assuming he doesn't get in the Origin team, I've sort of got him as the 18th man at the moment. It sounds like they're going to go with Luai and then one of Moses or Hines, just depending on fitness. I think if they need him to play seven, he could, but his versatility might sort of have him as that 18th man type player where he can cover the edge, that sort of thing, but also he may not play at all. On the chopping block, probably the most obvious one this week, Nathan Cleary. So out till post Origin essentially. Um, and I guess this does sting for those people who trade him out, trade him back in. That you've now got to trade him out and possibly trade him back in for the run home. So in that sense, I feel lucky I held him because it's two less trades. But I guess just frustrating. But injuries happen, and we just hope he recovers and gets back to his best. Sam Walker is my trap this week. And I guess this is mostly down to the fact they play the Sharks this week, who are the best defence in the league. They shut down and frustrated the Storm last week. So, the Roosters have been in great form, but um, again, you know, I think it'll be a quiet one this week. And then the Roosters do play round 13, which is handy, but they have a bye round 14, in which case we might be looking to move on Sam Walker anyway. So just not enough value to justify, multiple trades. Onto the 5/8 position, and the top pick this week, I've gone with KO Weeks, who's probably the best cheapie this week. I haven't gone as far as putting the best buy on him, but -22 break even, decent job security for the medium term. Um, I guess the Raiders are a pretty full strength team this week, other than the fact that I guess he's not their first choice halfback. But the fact he's got that position, and I guess a coach like Ricky Stewart's a pretty handy one to have if you're trying to, make a fist of it being a halfback. So yeah, I think you can bring him in pretty comfortably this week. On the chopping block, I've gone with Tamara Martin. So, has been dipping in value, I guess, along with the Warriors in general, just been, a bit flat the last few weeks. Will be interesting to see how he goes in the seven jumper this week, um, taken over from Sean Johnson. Maybe just more out of necessity. They've sort of run out of options. I don't know what's happened to Harris Tavita, but I know obviously Metcalf's out, Johnson's out. Um, but yeah, it could work out all right. It could be a hold. But guess given they're not playing round 13, I'm happy to have a couple of looks, and then if I need to flip in round 14, I potentially can. Um, the trap this week, I've gone with Jack Cole. So, bottom dollar cheapie, okay job security. I guess the just question mark is they haven't sort of designated how long Brad Schneider will be out for. So obviously, if it was a longer term injury, um, you could probably give him a bit of a run, a few weeks. He does cover around 13, 14. Um, but, I think you've got someone like KO Weeks who's a little bit more expensive, but, offers a bit more value and certainty around the role. So for that reason, I'd give Jack Cole on this. And Lockie Galvin, I've got as the slap. So, it doesn't play round 13, so there might be the temptation to trade him with Weeks. But after round 13, he does cover the rest of the origin period, which is super handy. We'll definitely be targeting a couple of Tigers players in round 14. So I think, we're going to try and hold him as long as we can. As I said, you know, the ultimate plan is to sort of run with Burton and Brown as my 5/8. Um, But, I guess he can sort of be the fourth half until Cleary comes back, or Sean Johnson, I suppose, would be the one exception that I would upgrade him. Onto the centre wing, and the top pick this week, I've gone with Blaze Talangi. So I guess they said he was a fullback, and he sort of looked the part, scoring a 90 odd, -3 break even this week. So, this might be the one chance to get on. Um, yeah, that's I think enough said. RTS is the trade out, long term injury. I was super lucky. I sort of went a bit of a differential move and traded him out instead of Bostock last week. Um, and then the news came that he was out injured anyway, and that would have been the move. I would have probably reversed the Bostock trade even if I went that way. So I guess it all sort of worked out. But if you've still got him, I'd trade him out. Dom Young is the trap. So again, people have seen that he's gone big again. Um, it's not to say that he can't do it again. I'm just suggesting it's not going to be this week against the Sharks. And then, we've talked about same as Sam Walker. He's got the buy in round 14. So do we get off? Basically, if you look at his scores, it just comes down to whether he's scoring tries or not. The games he's not scoring tries, super low floor. Games where he is scoring tries, well, he's got the high ceiling. So it is risk and reward. I just don't think this week it's worth the risk. Um, and the slap this week is Zach Lomax. So I guess similar to the Jack Bellin conversation on the buy this week, but don't trade out because he's on the buy. It's 1 week, you know. Same sort of thing. I saw a few people trade out Joe Money this week. Don't trade him out. He's got a concussion protocol. He'll be back next week. Onto the fullbacks, and so I guess again I haven't put it as the best buy probably because of the price, but definitely man crush of the week is Dylan Edwards. So I guess with the big money that's sort of dropping out of our teams with injuries and the like, we do have the luxury of paying up for a elite level fullback. And the more I look at Dylan Edwards, the more I think he's my guy. Um, Probably just the way my team's structured at the moment. We drink water last week. I'm probably not going to do it, but I'll be very scared of people who do have him in their teams, particularly head-to-head opponents. But yeah, the price is high. The break even's fairly high, but he plays for Penrith, so that's a tick. He's kicking goals with Cleary out. That's a tick. He's probably the biggest run meters getter in the game. So that's a tick. Um, so yeah, I think there's lots of good stuff about Dylan Edwards, and if you're looking for someone to bring in at fullback, I would make him your number one target. Chopping block, probably the second most obvious choice after Cleary, Tom Trbojevic. You know, um, out for probably about the same amount of time with also a hamstring injury. Given he's got a history of those, it's not ideal. So thanks, Tommy Turbo, but you've got the job. The trap this week, I've gone with Dan Atkinson. So obviously looked really good on the weekend, sort of steering the Sharks around against the Storm. But as we've talked about previously, Hines, Trindle both named in the squad. So you imagine he'd go back to taking a back seat or may even just drop out of the team altogether. So would be great if he could cover around 13, 14, but I guess we won't really know until we see Nico Hines in the Origin team. We can make assumptions and maybe bring him in, but I'd probably just steer clear. It's just one of those ones that's probably not worth it. And the slap this week, I've gone with Trey Fuller. So the hammer's back, which is great news. Obviously means Trey Fuller's out of the 17, which isn't great in that sense. But what it does mean is there's a good chance that Hammer will play Origin, which will obviously open a spot again for Trey Fuller. And as we know, the Dolphins cover around 13, 16, and 19. So all three Origin sort of rounds. So that's the reason why we're going to hold Trey Fuller as he can cover during those times. But that wraps it up for the tops, chops, traps, and slaps for round 11. So, obviously, as always, if you've got any comments, questions, thoughts, feel free to add them below the video. Give us a like if you enjoy this sort of analysis or if you enjoy the Supercoach content. Subscribe for all the fantasy sports content we've got on the channel. And other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.